Hi sailors! In this series, Sailing Team Tally-Ho takes you on a first-person view of an actual interaction with the racing rules of sailing. Our objective is to not give definitive adjudications, but to point out where some racing rules are likely involved. In nearly all cases, there are additional rules that could have been in play, but we felt were of lesser relevance to the situation. And you may not agree with that assessment, and we don't claim to be judging experts. We are merely showing a situation that had occurred in the best way possible, usually with a 360 camera, as a placeholder for thought and discussion. But we do invite the viewer to express their opinions in the comments in terms of whether they agree in the inclusion and interpretation of those rules, and whether any rules were violated, or whether we left something important out that we should have considered. We also invite questions. If you don't understand something of why we are using a particular rule, if we can't answer the question, we'll do our best to get an answer. Like in all sports, we believe that these rules are present to keep the sport as fair as possible. Also, when understood well across a racing fleet, it tends to reduce unsportsmanlike behavior and accidents. A rule that we do follow ourselves is that all of these scenarios actually occurred. There is no generative AI used. We do use some diagrams to depict the scenario where it's useful, but they are eyeball approximations. The software for this scenario that we used is by the name of Boats on SourceForge.net, which was produced by an internationally recognized sailing judge, Thibaut Gradel. The rulebook we use is the U.S. Sailing Racing Rules of Sailing for 2021 to 2024. We will update our videos as new versions of the rules are published as best as possible if they are affecting these scenarios. So, what are we waiting for? Let's get started with this interesting one, which was actually a request. Okay, here's the scenario. Tally-Ho is on a typical buoy race, and we are on our third leg out of 5. The wind is about 10 knots, a good medium wind with 17 boats in our fleet. Boats are in control, as in not overpowered by the wind, but we are moving fast enough that we need to account for some added maneuvering distance to be safe. Most of us within the fleet are within 10 to 12 boat lengths of each other, and some are just 3 to 4 boat lengths from us. In terms of time and speed, this means that we're all within about 30 seconds or so from each other, and some within 10 seconds of each other. This is typical for the Sonar 1 design fleet at Wayzata Yacht Club. 1 design means that all of the boats in the fleet are of the same design and are as evenly matched as possible. The fleet tends to clump into 2 groups based on what side of the course they chose to take on the current windward leg, and one side tends to unavoidably be favorable over the other one, even if it's only by a few yards. There are about 200 other boats in the event overall that are not in our class that we come across on our course, but they are not relevant to our race. But we need to still observe at least the navigation part of the racing rules with them. The less we tangle with them, the better. The wind today has been shifty, and with a southerly breeze oscillating about 20 degrees over a several-minute cycle. There doesn't seem to be a pattern that we could pick up to that cycle, except that when the wind picks up, it tends to move more south. In this point of view clip, Tally-Ho is approaching the windward mark from outside of the 3 boat length zone, but unfortunately is too far away to reliably predict, particularly in today's conditions, whether we can fetch or be able to get around the mark as we come in on a straight course. So at the start of the clip, it becomes clear that unless the wind shifts in our favor, as in a lift, we will not fetch or make the mark without having to take an extra tack. Unfortunately, again, we have boats to our windward which are close enough that it will be very detrimental and maybe even unsafe, as in not enough maneuvering room to duck them, not to mention the added burden of tacking in the zone, per Rule 18.3. So Rule 18.3 states that if we tack within the windward mark 3 boat length zone, that we cannot force another boat coming straight into the zone to have to head up beyond close haul, in other words, luff up. We made a split-second tactical decision, and it often comes down to that, that we felt that we were close enough, though, to squeegee around the mark rather than bail. That is, to do a loop with a jibe. You'll see our point of view definition of a squeegee rounding here. Often these roundings are given a 4-letter word description instead, of course. I have another video about what it's like to also have to bail, which is, of course, is even less fun than this scenario. We got close to the mark and kept as much momentum as possible right up to the mark, and then released the jib sheet to keep it from potentially backwinding, and then tipped the boat so that the main boom and the filled sails was still on the correct side to still have us be considered to be on the starboard tack. I stayed on the high side just to do any fending off or communication with other boats if needed. We didn't dare go any closer to the mark than what you see due to the risk of hooking the buoy anchor line on our rudder. In other words, to make it a really bad day. So in other words, as we fetch the mark, we need to add this extra distance to our tactic. We, of course, slowed down quite a bit due to this squeegee around the mark, and the other sonars in our groups quickly caught up and overtook us to windward. We, however, feel that we did not pass head to wind within the zone and cause a violation of Rule 18.3. Our interpretation of the rule is that the rule says passing head to wind, which we feel we came close to but did not pass. Therefore, we did not go from the port to the starboard tack as it states in the first sentence of the rule. So what do you think? Is passing head to wind only luffing up above close hauled? Is passing head to wind the same as tacking, or can you pass head to wind and still not tack? Is the word passing, as in passing though, important here? Is the port to starboard tack, it refers to a complete tack with the sails filling on both the port and the starboard tack side, or can it include anything head to windish? Or does the sails filling on either side not relevant to the rule? This is why I like to have these point of view clips to initiate the discussion. Okay, moving on. We then took only as much room around the windward mark and offset mark as necessary to get around the mark per Rule 18.2, regardless of whether there was an overlap in the zone or not. So I feel that this rule is not relevant here. We complied with it. The clip also includes our rounding of the offset mark, but by this time the windward mark show is over. Tally ho pulled out better than I thought we would, but I attribute that to having a reasonable amount of momentum at the mark and forcing other boats above us to change course. It certainly could have been worse if we didn't have as much momentum and we would have been rolled or blanketed by the fleet to windward, only to be able to get wind after everyone else had already left us behind. So we were lucky in that way. What would have happened if we had tacked within the zone? We felt that we would have certainly followed other boats approaching the mark. The boats behind us were coming up fast, as you see. There was really no good slot for us to do our fetch tack. Our only other option would have been essentially to have let the entire fleet go ahead of us as we bailed, did a loop with a jibe, and come from behind them, essentially taking a penalty turn. How could we have prevented this? The main way to prevent this is to not arrive to the starboard ley line, to the fetch mark, until we are as close to the 3-boat mark zone as possible. I'll call this tack the fetch or ley line tack. The shiftier the winds, the closer the fetch tack should be to the 3-boat length zone of the windward mark. Doing the fetch tack at the optimal place where you can be confident about the ley line is really important, because bailing or squeegeeing around the mark is slow, but also overstanding, going too far, is also more likely and can almost be as bad from a race standpoint. It's really important to get this tack right. Now, this may sound like it has an easy solution, but the reality is that the right fetch mark location can be very crowded, and the right place to tack may not be as ideal or as simple as you want. Again, this is often a split-second decision that is based on the scenario at hand. You'll see in this clip that sonar 464 nailed their fetch tack perfectly, or they got lucky with number 420. So I'll quit talking here and you can see the scenario played through from start to finish in real-time audio. I'm not going to make it, guys. Later, I may also put this up as a virtual reality clip as well, so you can see it in 360. So if you like this point of view depiction, please like, subscribe, and set the notifications. There are more here that I'll have links to, and we'll have lots more to come. Until then, keep sailing.